Well, Eric, it seems you've been pretty busy under this Cadillac.
Yeah, trying to put it back together. I've been concentrating on underneath the car. There's still a lot more to do up top. All the accessories got to go back on. But I got the differential on. I got the steering linkage is all back together, except this I still have to tighten and put a cotter in. Drive shafts are back in. Starter's back on.
That oil pan looks really nice.
Yeah, I painted it while it was off. While it was off the car, I cleaned it really well, and there wasn't much paint left on it. And so we had some paint in stock. It's not Cadillac engine blue, but it's better than nothing. So I spray bombed it just to make it look a little nicer and cut down on the rust. Although I'm very much hoping that this car isn't gonna see any bad weather anymore. If it was my car, it wouldn't. And yeah, so here we are. Now we did have a bit of a setback. We sent the radiator to a professional place, Ferndale Radiator, which is just a 30 or 40 minute drive from here, to have the gunk boiled out of it because this car is getting converted to Evans waterless coolant. And so we want to have everything as fresh as possible. Well, they told us that the radiator can't be, well, they can save the tanks, they have to recore it. So that's going to slow us down a little bit.
But he did say he will have the replacement core in for this Caddy on Monday. And hopefully that doesn't push you back too far with your plan for putting the rest of this car back together.
Yeah, I hope not. And there's other stuff I can do while we're waiting. The tires are mounted, but I haven't balanced them yet. The car's getting some exhaust work as well. So if I get all this back together and we still don't have the radiator, there's other things I can move to.
Well, sounds good. I saw you working on the front end here.
Oh, I wasn't doing anything. I just put the cotter pin back in there. To be honest, I tried to undo the nut here to get the axle out, and I couldn't get it. I had a breaker bar on there with a cheater pipe and everything, and it didn't move at all. And I was getting to the point where I was worried I was going to break something, so I found a workaround. I just unbolted the CV shaft from the differential and pulled the differential out, and I left the shaft in there. So I didn't have to torque that side. I just threw the cotter pin back in it. This side, though, I did take apart, so I'm going to have to torque that. That's another one of my pet peeves, these front-wheel drive cars. This nut puts a preload, it squishes the bearing together and it puts a preload on it. If it's too tight, you'll wear the bearings out in no time. If it's too loose, as the car's going down the road, the bearings can actually come apart. So putting the right preload on that is very important. I don't know what the spec is, but I've got the manual over there, so when I get to it, I'll stick a screwdriver in here to hold it. I'll torque it to spec, and then I'll put the cotter pin back in. So I'm glad I didn't have to do that. I mean, that side, maybe that side's too tight. Maybe it's a little rusty. I don't know. But since I didn't touch it, I'm not going to concern myself with it too much. But this side will be put back together the right way.
Well, it all sounds good. It's looking good. I'm looking forward to seeing how that new timing chain set works out.
Mm-hmm. I got an interesting timing chain for this car. It came from Schaefer INA. I've used their stuff before for European cars I've worked on. I put a INA timing chain, I believe it was, in a 2003 Saab that used to be my daily driver. And the one that I got came from Rock Auto Parts, and it said "Made in the USA" on it. So I was very happy to have it.
Now you
So
showed
that's
us
what's on this car.
Now you showed us earlier in this video of all the play that was in the timing chain over on the workbench there that you took off. How was the new one when it went on?
Very tight, a little tricky to put on. I had to line up the crank and the cam perfectly to get them to the sprockets to go on the shafts. So yeah, quite tight.
But that's going to make a difference in how this car runs now.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. And then the other thing, it had the cam gear. Well, it's right over. Is it still here? Or we move it. The cam gear is nylon, so it's just a matter of time before it starts falling apart. I wouldn't want that on my car. I'm sure this is the original timing set right here. So now he doesn't have to worry about it. For all the miles this customer puts on this car, that timing set is probably never going to wear out again, unless he's really driving the heck out of it.
Well, that's great news. And hopefully, if he wants to drive the heck out of it, he can.
Yeah.
With confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll be doing it in style, because as you've mentioned, as I've mentioned, this is the cream of the crop, the most premium Cadillac Eldorado they made, the Biarritz edition.
Mm-hmm. If you're going to have a Eldorado this body style, the 79 to 85 body style, I really think this is the winning combination for engine too. An Olds 350 with port fuel injection from the factory. That's really cool.
Wow, Eric, this Oldsmobile V8 and this Cadillac looks like it's almost back together again.
Yeah, I made an awful lot of progress in the last 2 days. I'm just about to the point now where I can't go too much farther on it. There's a couple more things I can put on in here, but we had to send the radiator out to be recored. We're hoping it could just be boiled out, but I mean, probably 2/3 of the time we send a radiator out to be boiled out and ends up needing to be recored. So when we get that back, I can put that back in and start putting some more stuff back on the front of the engine here. Found a couple of things. Someone's been here before. Alternator's been replaced once before or something, because some of the bolts in it were wrong. I took this, just like you see it, out of the back of the alternator. This bolt with these nuts on it was holding the alternator in on the back. It went into this slide here, where it moves up and down to tension the belt. And so someone must have lost the correct bolt. And so they found one that was the right thread, but it was too long, and they literally put these nuts on here as spacers to hold it. So I found a bolt the correct length and just put a washer on it, so now it doesn't have this craziness here. I'll say putting all the brackets back onto the front of the engine was pretty complicated. There's an awful lot of them, and the way they all fit together there's a lot to it. So it's a good thing I took pictures before I took it all apart, and then on top of that, I tried to kind of stack them in such a way that I could keep track of where they come from and where they go back on. And then bolts and nuts that came off, as I took them off, when I got the bracket off, I put them back through the holes that they came through on the brackets, or I zip tied the nuts to the holes and stuff like that, so that I wouldn't lose track of where they go. Even still, putting it back together was tricky. This bolt here has to go through 1, 2, 3, I think it's 4 brackets. This one bolt right here. I don't have it tightened up all the way yet, of course, because I gotta put fan belts on and stuff. But yeah, wiggling all around and getting the bolt all the way through is interesting. But yeah, I can do a couple more things here, but this isn't gonna get done today because we don't have the radiator. So I'm gonna do what I can do here and replace the heater hoses, because we're also replacing the radiator hoses. I forget where those are, they're in a box here somewhere. And then I'll probably start working on the exhaust.
Okay, sounds good. Let's pick it up when you've got this car back in the air, and we'll take a look at that exhaust. I know we've looked at it before, but it definitely needs some help.
Yeah, it's falling apart. Unfortunately, the way it fell apart, the hot muffler actually melted the carpet in the trunk on this car, which is pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, that is. But if it can be fixed, you're the man to do it.
I'll try.
So we'll pick that up right after this. This old junk is coming out.
Yep. Yeah, here's the new junk right here.
A nice new muffler, brand new resonator.
And we'll see what else I gotta do. There's a hanger I may have to reuse on here. We'll see. I think I can save it. I may have to cut the bolt, but that's no biggie. Gosh, this has gotta be a used car dealer repair here.
Looks like it's held together with baling wire. Certainly not anything we would do in practice at our shop.
Yeah, let's see here. Oh, it wraps around. Darn it. Okay, I thought I could just slide that out and deal with it on the bench, but I can't.
Now, Eric, I know you've said this before, but you've told me time and time again that one of the main portions of your job is undoing what other people have already done.
Oh, yeah.
And you are literally undoing this right now.
Well, yeah, and yeah, that is a lot of what we do here, especially with electrical stuff. That's the worst. People bandaging a car back together, and then I have to unmess up what they messed up and then fix the original problem. That's the worst part. Usually when it comes to something mechanical like this, You just have to look at it and you can figure it out. But the electrical stuff is the worst.
And at least with these parts, it's a quick hack and slash and get back to putting together the correct stuff.
Yeah, with exhaust, yeah. I mean, we don't always do the exhaust work here. This isn't too bad though. We usually farm it out because we don't have, you know, tools to custom bend pipes and all that.
No, we've got a great exhaust guy, Brian.
Mm-hmm. But
he did the true dual exhaust here on my '74
yeah,
Dodge Coronet.
he's the only person in the world that I will work on that I will let them work on my car, pretty much. So.
And rightly so. He's earned our trust over many, many years and some excellent fabrication and repair work to our vehicles.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to deal with this now, and then I'll test fit all that stuff. I haven't bought any clamps for any of this yet, and it looks to me like the front of this muffler is not gonna fit on this mid pipe. So I'll have to decide what to do about that. I might cut it here and put in a bigger pipe, or put in an adapter right there. I'm not sure how I'm gonna cross that bridge. So.
Okay, we'll pick it up once you figure it out.
Okay.
Looks like you're giving this Cadillac a facelift, Eric.
Yeah, we gotta put these bumper fillers on, which all of these cars from this time, the bumper fillers fall apart. Some of the fasteners holding it together are really hard to get to.
Well, I see you've got part of the chrome from around the headlights and turn signals. And you tell me you already did this one on the driver's side?
Yeah, I want to touch up the paint a little bit. For whatever reason, I mean, the stuff that we're putting on is aftermarket. I think it's ABS plastic. The stuff I'm taking off is urethane, and for whatever reason, it doesn't fit quite as well as the original stuff. This gray spot here, that's primer, that should be covered up, but the new parts just don't cover it. There's no way I can adjust them to cover it. So I was going to take, luckily black is a very, very, very easy color to match, as long as there's no metal flake or pearl or anything like that in it, it's just black. So I'm just going to take a little bit of black paint and touch that up with a brush and make it look decent. That's the best I can do with that. Also, these headlight bezels are brittle. And so as I took both of them off, they're breaking. Or were broken already, I'm not sure which. But I'll put a little bit of epoxy on there and glue them back together before I put them back on. So this same tab broke off on this side too, both of the outboards.
Not unusual for cars of this vintage.
No, like I say, it's just old and brittle, so.
And I see you've already got one of the bumper fillers on this side replaced.
Yeah, the bumper filler's all done. There's a piece of trim that's supposed to go on right here that got snagged somehow. He actually said his dog did it.
Yes.
And it was ripped off. I got it over here.
Those mighty pit bulls have mighty strong jaws. Look at what that
So, I
dog
mean,
did.
if I can't find another one or find someone to straighten this out, we'll put this one back on, but yeah, that one got beat up. The one that I took off the other side is in much nicer shape.
Well, it looks like you're on the home stretch.
Yeah, on the front. I haven't started on the back yet. The back is actually worse.
I know you've done a lot of work to this car, and we've hopefully documented a lot about it, learned a lot of things. So I know there's still a few more issues you got to resolve with the fuel injection system, but it's coming right along. Now that you got the whole front of the engine back together, new timing chain set, just like our guru recommends for anyone that wants to keep their front-wheel drive fuel-injected Eldorados running for the duration.
I think he said really any of the Cadillacs. I think they all have the same issue. They got that plastic cam sprocket. I don't know why the manufacturers did that. I mean, they say it was to make it quieter, but you put the metal one on and I don't hear any difference at all. So I don't know what they were thinking.
Probably saved 10 cents on the assembly line for each one.
Who knows?
But they did do it that way, so it's important to keep up with it.
And now that I've put a made in the USA metal one on, he'll probably never have to worry about it again.
That's always good news, keeping cars of this vintage alive and well for many, many years to come. So how's the Cadillac coming, Eric?
Almost done. What I've been working on mostly now is replacing the bumper fillers. So what this car came in with, you've probably seen it before. Let me see here. This right here is one of the best ones I took off of it. And this actually came from this corner, and they just fall apart. This is what was left of most of the urethane bumper fillers on this car, and it's just nothing left of it. It's fallen apart. Here's one of the pieces that came off of, I think that came off the driver's side rear, just under the fin. So the customer brought us the pieces to replace all that, and I've been putting it together and figuring out what part goes on top of what part. They don't fit as well as the old pieces.
Are these all aftermarket components?
Yeah, I'm sure they are. They definitely weren't made by GM. The old stuff is urethane and the new stuff is ABS plastic. In particular, I'm not real happy with this joint right here. I tried to tweak and push and pry and make it fit as good as I could get it. So it definitely looks better than it did because it was completely falling apart. I still have to put the trim on there. This was falling all apart here. I still have a piece to put on right here.
This side looks nice.
This came out okay. I still have to put that on there, like I said.
And around the back here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's 100% better. This car's looking pretty presentable now.
Yeah, it doesn't look so much like nobody cared about it anymore. It looks like a really nice car now. I mean, it's not perfect. The chrome has a teensy bit of just starting to pit in it. But I mean, there really isn't like any rust on this car. It's starting a little teeny bit in a couple of spots, but it's not that crusty rust. This is just undercoating I just broke off of it. That's not steel. So yeah, it actually is really nice. Vinyl top is shrinking a little bit, but it's not cracking yet, so.
Yeah, we can see overall it's cleaning up really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this car was a bit lackluster. I wasn't impressed when it first came in here, but the more you've been working on it, the more it's won me over. So I'm really glad to see that it's really starting to come together finally. And
I've brought enough of my own old cars back from the dead. I could kind of see when it got here, in spite of it being tired and dirty, I could see the diamond in the rough that it could be. So we're getting there. I still gotta clean the blue crap off the white walls. I had to take the rear wheels off. To replace this piece, I had to take this off, and part of this goes underneath this trim here. So I had to undo a couple of screws here and just flex this a little bit so I can undo these screws and pull that out, and then I was able to replace all that. I kind of wish that, honestly, whoever painted these could have done a little bit better job. There's not a lot of paint right here. That would look a lot worse if the plastic itself wasn't black. But that's the way he brought it to us, so. And it certainly looks better than falling apart.
absolutely. And with those fresh balonies on there, this car's gonna run and drive once again, be going down the road and looking pretty clean from 20 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. I'll let you get back to it and finish it up.
Okay.
And we'll see how we do next on this 1979 Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz, what we're calling the greatest Biarritz run ever. And hopefully, this is going to be the best run for this Biarritz that it's had in quite a few years. So we'll pick this up right after this. What you are hearing there, my friends, is the sweet sound of a 1979 Cadillac Eldorado with a 350 cubic inch port fuel-injected V8. And it is humming and running like an absolute well-oiled machine. Really got to give Eric credit on this one. Okay, friends and neighbors, here's the situation. Right behind me, you hear that beautiful sound of the 79 Cadillac Eldorado running smooth as silk. But Eric's not in the shop today, so I'm actually running things solo myself. I know, right? Me. I won't try to touch anything or mess anything up while I'm here, because heaven only knows what I can get up to when I'm by myself here in a workshop.
But that being said, the owner contacted me early this morning and said, hey, if at all possible, it's Christmas weekend, I'd really like to have my car back as a gift to myself. I said, absolutely. Of course you should. I mean, this poor owner, he bought this car 2 years ago and has not been able to run it or drive it since he bought it. And Eric has had to bend himself over backwards and sideways, working on the fuel injection system and all the mechanicals and all the electricals, just to make this thing purr the way you hear it behind me. So I really want to help the customer out, and I want to make sure that he has his car back. But because it is Christmas weekend, Eric's not here. He has family stuff that he's doing, as most of us do on Christmas. So because I'm here alone, I'm going to take it out for a quick test drive, and we'll see how this car performs, okay? Let's check it out.
All right, car fans and GM fans everywhere, this is an exciting moment for me. I've never actually driven one of these Cadillacs before, so I regret that I have to break the fourth wall a little bit more than usual. You'll see my reflection and a few other things because I'm going to use the handheld camera this time, but I'll do the best I can and give you an idea of what it's like to drive a fuel-injected Cadillac Eldorado. Let's see, right away, oh, you can tell just how soft and smooth this V8 is. Now, regretfully, this car is not licensed here in Michigan, is not registered yet. As we've talked about earlier in the videos, the owner bought this car in Washington, D.C. about 2 years ago. He got about 7 miles on his trip back home here to Metro Detroit when the car started acting up. He pulled into the nearest service center he could find, about 7 miles outside of DC. That shop put hands on it, and according to the owner, it has never run again. So if you recall, we'll flash back to when this car first came in. On the back of a flatbed, our tow truck operator friend Bruce was the one that dropped it off. But right away, oh my goodness, what a nice, comfortable place this is to be right now. It is absolutely whisper quiet in here. I put my foot on the throttle, and there's the power. Now again, I can't get this car up to road speed. I'm gonna have to stay in our little industrial park here. I know this is all very impromptu, and that just can't be helped right now because it's Christmas weekend. Eric's out of the shop, and I'm running things solo. But at this time and at this moment, I couldn't be happier. Even if I have to experience this driving sensation by myself. I understand this was a rather expensive car back in 1979, and when you think about the batch fire technology that this car uses, it has an electronic fuel injection system that's German made by Bendix. I believe it came out somewhere between 1975 or 76 in other GM models, but this is the first year for the front wheel drive Cadillac Eldorado. What a lovely and sublime place this is to be right now. We've got this plush red leather interior. I checked the power features, the windows worked, the power mirrors work. I've even got a temperature gauge right here on the rear view mirror. Turn signals work. And this car is so nice and gentle. Step on the brakes. I've got lovely smooth braking control. Go around this turn. Now again, I would love to get this car up to speed to 50 miles an hour here on our state highway. But as I've mentioned, that's out of the question, because when the owner purchased this car, just to reiterate, he got about 7 miles outside of Washington, D.C., he tells us, and has not been able to drive the car since. And when it was dropped off to us, it was in a sorry state. It was covered in dust. It was full of leaves and twigs, like it had been sitting outside for the better part of those 2 years. I'm guessing it's been an entire winter outside, although the owner tells us that this car had been to 3 other shops here in Metro, and he was not, none of them were successful in reviving this car. But I am so happy to report and be able to experience that we have been successful. Eric has been successful. We did not give up. And I want to give a big shout out to a gentleman in Illinois by the name of Bruce Rowe. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to talk to Bruce for this episode. But we discovered Bruce through the Cadillac Owners Forum because we were looking for clues. We were looking for information about this fuel injection system that GM utilized. And he is the individual renowned throughout the GM and Cadillac owners community as being the person that effectively reverse engineered the entire system from scratch. I don't know if Bruce is an automotive engineer himself or if he's just a very, very talented Cadillac enthusiast, but his name comes up time after time after time again when you look up information, or if you Google or go to any of the owners' forums about fuel-injected Cadillacs like this Eldorado I'm driving right now. And he was good enough to provide us with not only his own schematics and drawings, the logic chains for how the computer thinks. As Eric said, it doesn't really think, but quote unquote, if it is a brain, the way that it thinks and the way that it goes together. And we did our absolute best to troubleshoot it. We did our absolute best to follow his instructions to the letter, but something just wasn't right, and that was just our lack of experience, I want to say. And we brought in an automotive electrical expert friend of ours, Chris. You may have seen him in our other videos to help us out, but he wasn't able to sort everything out the first time. And that's just because all of us are flying blind. We've never put hands on one of these fuel-injected Cadillacs before. So we reached out to Bruce in Illinois, and he went out of his way to talk us through it, provide us with evidence, information, schematics, drawings, and eventually, when we still weren't having the results that we were looking for, because just like before, when we got this car running, we got the V8 operational again, he went out of his way to give us the information we were looking for. And if I can, I would really like to interview him about his experiences defining and then helping people like us resurrect this antiquated but obviously effective GM technology. It is known as being troublesome. It is known for, dare I say, being somewhat unreliable and having multiple Achilles heels. The timing chain being the first and the computer system being the second. But once you find the expert that knows their stuff and you're able to utilize that information, you get what we have just experienced, which is just somewhat sublime. It's smooth. I can tell there's power there. I can't open it up here in our little industrial park, especially with this car not being registered. I don't even know if it's insured, to be honest, which if it's not, that's something we have to be careful of when it comes to customers bringing their vehicles into our facility. Everybody needs to be registered and insured. But of course, we're working with cars that are often works in progress, and they haven't even been able to be registered or inspected or anything else like a normal car would be. So I'm going to say it. This car has won me over. I didn't like it when it came in. I thought it was ugly. I thought it was in rough condition. I had a lot of prejudging going on with this car when it arrived. And Eric never gave up on it, and he liked it from the moment it rolled in here. It's a black Cadillac Biarritz with a red interior. It's rust-free from down south in Washington, D.C., and he refused to give up on it. And even though it's taken us so much more time than anticipated, as some of these resurrection projects often do, and there isn't a whole lot we can do about it, especially when we have an information gap and we're working with technology that is not understood by most of the car community in general. But he never gave up on this car. And I think it really says a lot for us as a company, for Eric as a professional, and hopefully you're enjoying the journey with us. Let me go ahead and show everyone one other thing. As I mentioned, I was having difficulty with the climate control unit, not realizing this is automatic climate control in 1979. So let's hit that defrost. There we go. Now the windshield is nice and clear. We're going to set it to a nice comfortable 70 degrees in here, so when the owner shows up, everything's going to be nice and comfortable in here for him. I've named this episode the greatest Biarritz run ever, and I have to say that came pretty darn close to being the best Biarritz run I've ever had. It was the first Biarritz run I've ever had, but I think it's going to be the greatest one I've ever had, because this is the culmination of so much time and effort in getting this Cadillac Eldorado EFI back on the road. And I'd like you to hear just how smooth and quiet that new exhaust system is that Eric installed. And how lovely, smooth, and quiet this V8 is under the hood. Well, you can really hear those 8 fuel injectors clicking away, doing their job, firing in sequence with this Bendix. Okay, friends and neighbors, so you witnessed it firsthand, just as I did while the camera was running. This car was purring and idling smoothly and beautifully, and all 8 injectors were firing in sequence in perfect rhythm, and then the car just shut itself off, and now it will not restart. So, if it was a fuel-related problem, or if it was the fuel injection computer again, the car probably would have sputtered and quit. That's what Eric says. I just got off the phone with Eric, and he said, well, it's probably not fuel-related this time, because if the fuel system cut out, it would eventually just use whatever fuel was remaining inside the engine and then sputter to a halt. But in this case, it just acted as if it turned itself off with a key. I mean, it was like just instant, which indicates, he says, an ignition problem. So evidently, according to our Cadillac fuel-injected guru, Bruce, in Illinois, these cars also have a history of failed ignition computers. Now, fortunately, there is a fix for this, which is to convert it back to the standard GM HEI ignition system, which apparently are reverse compatible. So Eric's on his way in soon. I'm going to go grab some food. That's what he's doing now, and he says as soon as he gets back, we'll bring it back in the shop and start testing to see if we can demonstrate that it is in fact an ignition computer failure. So, hoping for our Christmas miracle, and we didn't get it, because cars they don't give you miracles. They just give you problems and an empty checking account. But that's par for the course. So we'll bring this 79 Eldorado back into the shop, and we will make every effort to see what we have to do next. Looks like you're not quite back to square one, Eric, but you are chasing out another problem here with this 79 Cadillac.
Yeah, once again, the finish line keeps moving away from us. You had it running beautifully a couple hours ago, and now it doesn't run at all. Pretty sure the fuel injection computer's working fine. I think it's the ignition module that's failed now, which our Cadillac fuel injection guru told us they are prone to, and apparently, now we've talked to the customer about it, it's been known to do this before. So we didn't know that.
That would have been helpful to know a couple months ago.
Well, who would have known? I'm sure everybody thought. I'm sure that's why someone replaced the distributor in it.
Absolutely.
Someone knew at some point that it wasn't getting spark, but when we got it, it wasn't getting fuel. We could run it off of starting fluid, so I never looked at the ignition system before, other than to put plugs in it because the plugs were so fouled.
But you did notice when you first started taking the engine apart that the distributor that was in the back seemed good.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a question as to, well, why did another shop replace the distributor? It looks like they were addressing the symptom, but not the underlying cause.
I'm trying to back probe this connector. I can't. I used to have T-pins to do this. I don't have any handy right now. I'm trying to use a paper clip and it's just too fat to get in there. I'm trying to bypass the ignition computer and run it just as a regular HEI distributor, but I can't find my darn T-pins. Maybe I didn't bring them. I didn't expect to have to do this. It was running awesome last time I drove it, so.
Well, it is the Christmas season, and you told me to be wary, even though it's the time for miracles, that old cars don't give you miracles. They just give you more problems.
Yep.
And often an empty checkbook.
Yeah, afraid so.
But you said there's also, according to our Cadillac guru, there is another fix if bypassing the ignition module doesn't solve it.
I'm just doing this to diagnose it and get it running so that we know for sure it's definitely the ignition module. The preferable fix actually is to take this distributor out and put in one from a, what do you say, 75 to 77, I think, Seville with fuel injection, and and not even with fuel injection, just with this same engine, the old 350.
With the HEI?
And then you're basically just running it as a regular HEI ignition system.
Because they are reverse compatible.
Yep.
Or backwards compatible.
Yeah. I don't know why Cadillac bothered to put this stupid... What's it do?
That's a good question, but that we think is the culprit there. You've already had the fuel injection computer out, and not only were all those comparator chips bad, but you said our guru also found when he opened up the computer box, there was something even he hadn't seen before.
Yeah, and I don't remember what off the top of my head.
But it was some sort of a failure inside the...
Causing it to run very rich, and that's what that's the problem this car had. It would run, but it was very rich.
It was one of the primary problems this car has. Turns out there were multiple problems this car had, multiple symptoms that we didn't even know about.
Yeah,
until you address the other elephants in the room.
I think some of it was induced by the other shops, and I'm not picking on them. This is, maybe I am a little bit. Shops that work on modern cars that people are using as daily drivers that are only maybe 15 or 20 years old tops, they use a different skill set than we use to fix these older cars. So if you're just hopping on one of the subscription-based service information websites and you're using scan tools and stuff, you're going to have a very hard time fixing cars like this. So many of these components need to be reverse engineered, and you got to find the guru who's already done that.
It's one of the primary traditional methods of investigation. You got to talk to people.
For almost every car there's a guru or someone who's just fallen in love with it and backwards engineered it, and that's what our contact in Illinois has done. He's a electronics engineer, I believe he's retired now, who just kind of fell in love with this fuel injection system and reverse engineered it. And so even though when we sent this computer to him, something had failed on it they'd never seen before, he was able to diagnose it and repair it surprisingly quickly. I sent the computer to him, I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week. He got it on Monday, fixed it, and I had it back in my possession by Thursday. So it was just a week, maybe a day shy of a week turnaround from the time I sent it to the time I got it back.
And that's after shipping it all the way across Lake Michigan.
Yeah. So.
But he definitely has not just the tool set, but also the laboratory that he set up to work on those computers.
Yeah, he sent me a picture of his test bench. It's pretty cool. He's got a vacuum pump, an oscilloscope, and a couple other cool things.
So a lot of the tools that you were using to diagnose and work on this engine.
Well, I wasn't using an oscilloscope.
Right.
I've used one before, but I wasn't using it this time. Oscilloscopes are super, super cool, but you usually don't need them unless you're really, really getting into the nitty-gritty, especially on an old car like this. There's stuff they're very good for, but I usually don't. There's usually quicker and easier ways to find out what you need to find out without resorting to an oscilloscope. And for those of you that don't know, an oscilloscope is basically a very, very, very fast graphing multimeter. So,
Well, I gave a big shout out to Bruce Rowe in Illinois, our Cadillac guru when it comes to this EFI batch fuel injection system on this Olds 350 V8. He's been a great resource, and I hope we get to talk to him.
yeah, I hope so too.
Well, I just want to say, it is the Christmas season. I know you're going to be spending time with your family here very soon, so Merry Christmas, Eric. I know we were hoping for our little Christmas miracle of getting this Cadillac out on the road again, but I really enjoyed the test drive I took with it today. And as I mentioned to the audience and to the camera, you were right. You were right all along. This car has won me over. The front-wheel drive Eldorado, I was skeptical of its lineage, its looks, its appearance, and its reliability and its technology, but I gotta say, it's a winner. I like it now, and I know this is one of the cars, if you had the opportunity, I'm sure you'd be buying one for yourself.
I would. If this customer ever wanted to sell this car, I would, if I had the money to buy it, I would try to, because I really like this a lot.
Well, after the bill we're gonna give him, maybe he will want to sell it to you.
Yeah, maybe. I've always liked this body style Eldorado a lot, but you know, most of the engines that you got in them were kind of turds. You got the HT 4100, you got the diesels, you got the, for 1 year only, they had the V468. You know, so I didn't know until this car came in that there was a good one, the Olds 350. Here we are.
Just like this 71 Cutlass behind you with the Rocket 350. It's effectively the same motor.
Pretty much.
Just,
This one's got fuel injection and that one doesn't.
I put my foot on it out there on the test drive, and you mentioned it too when you test drove this car. It's got the power.
Yeah, I didn't burn the tires. I didn't give it any more than maybe half throttle. But with the response it gave me at half throttle, it's surprising. I think this car probably would burn the tires if you matted it. But I'm not gonna try that with a customer's car.
No. But just one more reason why this car has definitely won me over, despite how it looked and how it sounded and how it acted when we first brought it in here. It's come a long way, and it's taken you a long time to get to this point. It's taken us a long time as a new company to get to this point, but I can see we've made a lot of progress, and we've just got one more big hurdle to clear. And once you work through this...
I hope just one more. We thought we cleared them all 24 hours ago.
Exactly. So you just never know in this business, and we'll take it in stride, and we'll try not to let it get us down too much, because this is the season for celebrating, having projects to work on and people to spend time with that we care about. So again, just Merry Christmas to you, Eric, and I know you definitely deserve your time off, but you're going to give this one more try to see if we can get this car running tonight. And then after that, I think you've earned a break. Go spend time with your family and drink eggnog. And
I'm not sure it's going to happen tonight. I can't back pin this connector with this paper clip. It's just too fat. I'm going to damage something. I need a T-pin. So I don't think it's going to happen tonight, but maybe it'll happen on the 26th.
Day after Christmas, Boxing Day. That'll be good. Well, I'll see you back here after the holiday.
Alrighty.
So until then,
Merry Christmas.
and to all a good night, especially all you Cadillac and GM fans out there. We'll pick this up again, right here at Chase Classic Motors. Hey Eric,
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
So what's been going on with the 79 Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz?
Okay, so just to bring you up today, I don't remember where we left off. This car's got port fuel injection from the factory on an Olds engine. We sent the computer for the fuel injection to our guru in Illinois. He sent it back. The car was running absolutely amazing. Had a lot more power than I thought it would too. I never floored it, but with the response it gave me, even just from a prod to the throttle, I'll bet you if you did throw it, floor it, probably would roast the tires. I'm not gonna do that with a customer's car unless I have to, but I think it would. So it was running awesome. And then we took it for one more test drive just to make sure everything was sorted before having the customer come and get it. And it was great, pulled it into the yard over here, or the lot over here. We're getting ready to pull it back in, and while it was idling out there, it conked out. Stopped just like you turned off the key.
And I could not restart it.
Yep. So I checked it out, and I found out this time it was an ignition problem. So this car does have kind of a fancy ignition on it. Now I've got a spare distributor from this car because one of the other 4 shops that worked on this car before we got it, for some reason replaced the distributor. And we found out later after talking to the customer a little bit that, oh yeah, it had an intermittent stalling problem. So I think this car actually had 2 problems when it came to us. The fuel computer had failed in such a way that it was running super rich, and the ignition computer was intermittently failing, causing the car to stall. What's going on with this ignition module, if you guys that might be familiar with GM-HEI, this is going to look very familiar to you, except we've got a little bit of an unusual module here. It's got 3 pins. Now this module actually, I hate to say communicates, but I guess you can use that terminology. It's so simple, I don't want to think of it as communication. But it sends the signal from the sensor at the base of this distributor that all the HEIs have. This module sends that signal to this black plastic box on the bulkhead right here. And then that plastic box on the bulkhead sends a signal back to this module and tells it when to fire the coil. And so what I did was I took out the fancy 5-pin ignition module that's in the distributor in the car currently, and I retrofitted it to the older, more basic 4-pin ignition module, which was super easy. Now, I did a little research on my own, and it looks like to me that the only reason the big black box is there in the first place is to back off the ignition timing under conditions where the engineers felt that this engine would produce oxides of nitrogen, NOx. So basically, it's really just an emissions thing. So I'm not hurting the performance of the car at all to bypass that. At least I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I'm not. We're going to take this car for a test drive. We're going to get the engine fully warmed up. We're going to put a lot of load on the engine and work it hard and make sure that it doesn't spark knock. If it does, I'll back the timing off a little bit. If it doesn't, I'm going to leave it alone and we're going to tell the customer to come and get it.
Well, that's great news, Eric. I'm so happy. I know you reached out one more time to our expert out in Illinois.
Yeah, and he had some things to say about the ignition, but he doesn't seem to understand the ignition system on this car as well as he understands the fuel injection. So,
well, he is the master of the fuel injection system.
yeah, he's the only person I can find that knows how to fix it, but he knows everything about it.
And he did put us on the right track. He said, oh yes, the spark control ignition system, that will also has a tendency to fail. First intermittently, and then because I drove this car, it failed completely.
Yeah.
So that's my history with cars like this. But hey, in this situation, it actually worked out for the better.
Yeah, he didn't have a fix for that big black box. And it wouldn't be easy. I should have taken it off and showed it to you. On the back side of that big black box is a bunch of potting material that you'd have to get out in order to fix anything anyway. And it's not easy, and it's almost certainly not worth it unless you've got one of these cars and you still need to pass emissions for some reason.
Because you'd have to put it in a special oven, bake it, get the potting material to melt, and then take it out, and then get access to those electronics, and then somehow fill it with insulation material again once it's ready to go back inside, because it's so hot under the hood, and it's just unfeasible.
Right, and like I said, the only thing you're doing is getting rid of NOx, and not even all the time, only under certain conditions. So why not just retrofit it to the 4-pin module?
Back when these cars had to be so rigorously emissions checked, that was important for new car sales. But nowadays, 45 years later, we just want it to run smooth and as best as possible to make the customer happy.
Right, and you could actually get this Olds 350 with this fuel injection on older Cadillacs than this one without the big black box. And then they would run the 4-pin module. So that would be like what was the first year for this, 75 or 76 Sevilles with the Olds 350 up until 77 or 78, I don't remember off the top of my head. And it would have been exactly what I just retrofitted this car to.
which is why he told us one of the solutions would be to retrofit it to an earlier version of the late 70s Seville.
Yeah, well, he literally told us to find a Seville with this distributor and just pop it in and not hook that up. I did basically the exact same thing.
So the solution works. So you turned it over earlier, it's running smooth again, gonna take it for another test drive, although first you said you want to change the oil because of the gas wash situation.
Yeah, unfortunately this car seems to try to start very rich, and we've started it a few times, checking the ignition system and whatnot, and so the oil is kind of gassy again, so.
Which, to be fair, you do want some fuel, and because this is electronic fuel injection, it's almost like it's being choked to run rich when you first start it up.
Right. Any cold engine needs more fuel to start. It's just that we've done it so many times while I was checking the ignition system out, making sure that it was the module that failed, that now it was kind of gas washed. I pulled a plug. I could smell gas a while ago while I was diagnosing it. I was like, oh crap, I hope it's not gas washed again. It's not gas washed, but there's enough gas in the oil that I don't want to give the car back to the customer this way.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
So I'll let you get back to that, and then we'll hit the road, take it for another test drive, and see how this 1979 Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz hopefully makes its final run with us here.
I'm gonna miss it, honestly. I mean, it's way past time to move on to the next project. We're tripping over cars here that I need to get onto. But by far, this is my favorite car that we've had here from a customer. I love this car, and I love this technology that when it works awesome, but nobody else wants to touch it. I'm sure another shop would have put a 4-barrel carburetor or something on this, and this is so cool.
And I'm looking forward to finally giving the customer some good news. He stopped by when you weren't here over the weekend, last week, and I brought him up to speed on what's going on and told him you had the solution, or were researching the solution for the spark ignition failure. And now we've got it, so I'm really looking forward to getting him back on the phone and hopefully getting this car back to its rightful owner. Okay, let's check it out right after this. I know you say you really like this car, Eric. How does it feel to drive it?
Terrific.
A little sublime, perhaps?
Yes, it is. It's such a nice car. And I'm a sucker for red interior anyway. All other things being equal, red is my favorite color for a car interior. And to me, just, if you're gonna get an American luxury car, you can't beat the combination of a red interior with a nice classic luxury color for an exterior. So black, white, or silver. And then if I can't get that, a nice metallic red exterior, or a fancy blue, not that that would go with a red interior, that would be okay too. The colors I can't stand on cars of this vintage are the ones that I think were the most popular at the time. The earth tones, yuck. Metallic browns and greens, I don't understand why that was so popular, it's disgusting. Although I do own a 1980 Plymouth Grand Fury that's metallic brown, and I adore it. So.
Well, let's see what kind of power she's got off the line, huh?
Oh, off the line? I mean, that's from what, a 25 roll or something?
That's a good passing gear.
I don't know if I'm going to floor it off the line.
No, you don't have to.
Huh?
You don't have to.
Oop. Tilt wheel isn't locked down. It didn't burn the tires, but I eased into it too. Where's the thing? Oh, there it is. hope he had it all the way in. I didn't know it was unlocked. It's definitely peppy though.
And I think it's silky smooth.
It's very smooth. I don't think it's as soft as you would expect from a late 70s Cadillac, but it is smooth.
That power delivery is very smooth and very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we would love to take this car out on the open highway, but unfortunately it's not registered.
Nah, the temporary plate on it expired a year ago, so I mean, it's not really legal for me to be driving it the way I'm driving it.
But it is the weekend. We're here in our own little industrial park, and we are allowed to test drive customer vehicles.
Well, we have to.
Definitely. I know you're always saying you wish we had more time to do more test drives to really fine tune and meet the customer's expectations as best as possible.
Yep.
Because if it passes your seal of approval, odds are it's going to be good for the customer too.
I wish this car had a temperature gauge. It's only got idiot lights.
Well, I did shoot it with the temperature gun last time, and it was cool as a cucumber.
And it should be. It's got a new thermostat in it, and that Evans coolant we put in it has much better heat transfer than the typical 50-50 mix of ethylene glycol and water. So he shouldn't have to worry about any cooling system problems, I don't think. I mean, I didn't put a new water pump on it. I didn't do anything with the heater core except to flush it. But other than that, the cooling system's all new.
But I believe I mentioned in my test drive, this was a rather expensive car for 1979.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a high five-figure car in today's money.
Mm-hmm. You remember what it cost in 79?
I'd have to look up the figures. But again, considering what you got for the money, this was quite a bit of car for the time.
If I remember correctly, my 78 New Yorker Brome with the salon package cost, I think it was $11,000 new in 78. I'm guessing this car here was probably in the ballpark of 15 grand.
Because you were paying Cadillac money for that Cadillac experience.
We'll do a video on my Checker one of these days. Believe it or not, that car was very expensive new. That was like a nice Buick or a slightly used Cadillac to buy that car new. All right, I'm just wasting a little time now. I'm trying to get the engine warm so that when I change the oil, it gets as much of the stuff out as possible. I once drove a numbers matching RTSE Hemi 4-speed Challenger through this very lot.
You sure did. But which one do you like more?
Oh. Okay, if I answer that question...
Mopar fanatics are going to crucify you.
Yes, they will. If I answer that question honestly, I have to give you a caveat. Money doesn't mean much to me. So which one would I rather have? For value-wise, of course, the Hemi Challenger.
Yes.
Which one would I rather own because I like it and I enjoy driving it? This.
And it's understandable.
This is more my style.
And this is a nice place to be. A 70 Dodge Challenger has an incredible legacy. But there's something very special about driving a late 70s Cadillac, too.
And I've always had a soft spot for Cadillacs. My grandfather had a lot of Bromes in the 80s, so he never had an Eldorado, at least not in my lifetime. He had one before I was born, but I remember him always driving big black Bromes, usually with black interiors. And so because of that, I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for Cadillacs.
Well, during our last meeting, this car's owner told me he does intend to drive it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said it's going to be his daily driver in the summertime.
Probably the spring and fall, too,
So,
as long as the weather's not too bad.
I gotta say, I think I'm right there with them. I have grown to passionately hate cars. At least cars newer than about 2005, 2010. I hate them. And I go to pick apart junkyards all the time to get stuff. And there'll be a beautiful car there. I was just at, I don't remember if it was U-Pole in Pontiac or it was U.S. Auto Parts in Sterling Heights, but there was a black 84 Riviera there with a red interior, no rust. Odometer said 16,000 miles. Maybe it was 116,000, but it had to be an easy 116,000 because there's no rust on it. and it's sitting there in the junkyard, and people are pulling parts off of it. And I started thinking, if cars like that are just gonna get thrown away, that's what I'm gonna start buying and driving daily. Now, it's gonna make me sick to my stomach to drive cars like that in the snow here in Michigan. But it's if people are just gonna throw them away and then get crushed anyway, I might as well give that poor car a few more years worth of service, and I'll enjoy driving it at the same time.
Because when you drive a car of this vintage, you have to drive it. And you have to bond with it. I jump into my new 23 Jeep Compass, and as nice as it is, I was actually arguing with it the other day because it was acting like my smartphone. And it was causing me some sort of frustration. I recognized that Jeep of mine is just a smartphone with wheels.
We'll do a video on that one of these days too, I think. One of the reasons, I think there's that phenomenon kind of has a lot to do with why people don't love cars like they used to.
Especially younger generations.
Right. In the 50s and 60s and even a bit into the 70s and 80s, people would look forward to the new model cars coming out and the features they had and the style and all that, and people really kind of don't really do that anymore. And maybe we can do a video on that one of these days. Why I think people have fallen out of love with cars. It's so much more of a burden now than it used to be. But I was going somewhere with that, I don't remember.
And they
My
really,
soapbox.
they're not as big of an integral part of a successful personal, professional, social life.
No, I mean, you look at like this car, 79 Cadillac, and compare it to like a 79 Chevy, and you can see where the Cadillac is a nicer car. You do the same thing today with a brand new Cadillac and a brand new Chevy. Show me where the Cadillac is a nicer car. It's much harder to point out.
Well, I'm with you there, Eric.
You don't feel like your car is on your side anymore when you buy it. It's built to make it to the end of its warranty and then fail. And if you love it so much that you wanted to keep a car that's only 10 or 15 years old on the road forever, I don't think you could practically do it anymore because they're so complicated. It's just not feasible. Whereas this car here is over 40 years old.
45 now.
Yeah, and in spite of the fact that it was tricky, here it is. It's still going. Are you going to be able to keep a 2024 car on the road for 45 years? I don't think you're gonna. I think it's gonna be so impractical that you just can't.
Will I be driving my little Jeep in 2068? I don't think anybody will be.
I don't. It's like I said.
It'll be lucky
so
to make it into the
much of that
2030s.
car is gonna fall apart that you're just not gonna be able to do it.
And the manufacturers aren't going to be providing software updates or anything else that it may need.
No, I don't think they're gonna be supporting it at all.
And incredibly, even though you and our Cadillac guru Bruce have had to dive into the computer inside this car to make it function again, it can still be done with basic non-proprietary chips and components.
Right. Nothing here is really proprietary. Now, it had to be reverse engineered, but it was all available. The chips are still made brand new.
And it took some passion for someone to reverse engineer a system like this. But it just shows you, even cars of this generation, this is the height of the malaise era, and there's people out there that absolutely still love these cars. They have not fallen out of love with cars, particularly cars of this, like this, a Cadillac Eldorado of the late 70s. Someone is really charmed by them, and it is a charming car. It looks good. I think it probably makes you feel good.
Someone's is including me. This
It is.
a great car. I'm a little bit jealous of our customer. If he ever decides to sell this, I would try very hard to buy this car.
I told him
It's
that.
Fantastic.
I told him that, and I told him to keep you in mind if he decides to put it up for sale, because this car has been a labor of love, and I know he is a little frustrated with how long it's taken and the cost, the expense. But all things being equal, I mean, if you're driving a nice, stylish Cadillac, even for the amount of money, and we're talking between $10,000 and $15,000, I still think you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, and this is the nicest one. It's not an ugly color, like I said, those earth tones that were so popular. It's a Biarritz, so it's got the fancier trim and everything.
You just have to be prepared to have a budget, which is still a fraction of what it costs for a new car.
Yeah, and once again, I like the system. I love this technology, like this fuel injection that people think can't be fixed. Well, it can be. You just got to dig a little harder. And the next, and honestly, we could have cut the time down that it took us to fix this car down to a third of what it took us this time, now that we know where to go, what to look for, and who to ask. If I had this car to do over again, instead of going from September to December, it probably would have only taken a couple of weeks. Hammered out the work I did on the engine while that was going on, and in probably 2 or 3 weeks, I'm sure everything would have been fine.
This is a learning experience. That was a big lesson for us, but I'm glad to see that it's paying off finally.
All right, well, I think that's enough driving. It's got to be warm. I'm just enjoying myself now. Let's go back to the shop and give this car the oil change and give the customer the good news.
All right, I'm with you. But this has been fun, Eric. I do enjoy it when we get a chance to talk about the experiences of driving a car like this and what it means in this day and age. You know, a lot of other channels do car reviews, and a lot of people talk about and have better narratives and descriptions of cars like this, but I don't think those people are having the opportunity of actually bonding with a car the way you do, because you have to do open heart surgery on them, and then when the patient is ready, get to experience it as to what it took not only to resurrect the car from the brink of death, but to bring it back and then be able to sing its praises. I think it's something pretty special. I hope the audience is enjoying that.
There is something to knowing that a car is running off of your blood, sweat, and tears. It helps you to bond with it and to like the car a lot more. And that's part of why I hate new cars so much, because you don't, the opportunity to do that in any practical way is just not there, but you can still do it with a car like this.
I know you did kick the defroster on so we can get rid of some of the
it's starting to fog up a little bit.
Some of the fog building up here.
And I don't, this car probably is going to come back for some other things. The air conditioning doesn't work in it yet, in spite of the fact that someone put a new compressor on it. And it's an old car. Oh, it stalled. Okay. So, I mean, he's probably going to have leaks or who knows what in the future. And he'll be bringing it back to us for as long as we made him happy enough to come back, which I think we did. He brought it to 4 other shops, and they stole his battery, they stole his clock, which apparently was here, and the car ran worse when he got it back, if it ran at all. And we're giving him back a running, driving car that I think he can use as a daily driver in good weather. So
it looks good.
I hope he'll be happy.
It looks good, it runs good, sounds good. I think you should be very proud. Well, let's see what happens next.
All right.
Thanks for the drive, Eric. That was fun.
The pleasure was all mine.
That is a very happy man. Taken a lot to get this car up to this point, so we'll get back inside the shop and see what else we can take care of today.
I know I overshot it a bit on putting it in a drive. That's another little problem this car has that maybe he'll have us fix one day. The indicator on the Prindle doesn't move, so I don't care what gear I'm in as long as I go forward. So I just put it down. But yeah, it's stuck. It indicates that it's stuck in reverse. So.
Well, I'm sure that's something we can be taken care of later if he wants it.
Yep. I think it's all fixable.
Well, you've certainly proven that to everyone. This car is fixable, and once it's fixed, it is enjoyable.